Good afternoon, I'm Peter Ryan. On tonight's news we talk with Alan Bauer and his son Ron, who have just competed in the Wind Safari. After 10,000 kilometres of bull dust and mud, the Bauers won their diesel class and out of 198 starters finished 30th outright.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
In tonight's news at 6, we again feature a local athlete competing in the Seoul Olympics. Tonight we profile the nation's #1 table tennis player, Gary Cavill.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Several hundred people packed into the Redhead Surf Club last night to discuss the council's plans for a new rubbish dump. Alderman Welsh, who chaired the meeting, says the existing tip at Redhead has run its life and there is a need for a dump near the existing one with access off Oakdale Road at Gateshead. Local residents and members of the Redhead Progress Association are concerned about the environmental impact and possible health risks. Progress Association Vice President Ken Owens says residents have had enough. He claims feral cats, rats and cockroaches are a problem near the dump, and the new location would be only 300 metres from houses. The group wants an independent environmental impact study. Alderman Welsh says there will be no new tip until 1995. He says many options would be too expensive, but he concedes residents have valid reasons for not wanting the new tip in their area. He says the use of old open-cut mines in the Upper Hunter as dumps could avert the need to relocate the tip. At this stage, that is only an idea.
Speculation about the possible inclusion of the land has been intense ever since the state recreation area was formally gazetted. The 20-hectare block was part of the deceased Bailey estate, and pressure was on the previous Labor government to buy it for use as parkland. The block was to have been auctioned on the 17th of this month, but according to the Newcastle City Council, it was withdrawn. Member for Newcastle, George Keegan, today confirmed the Department of Planning is in the process of buying it as the purchasing authority for the government. The deal hasn't been settled yet, so the purchase price cannot be revealed. Within a month of settlement, however, the Department of Planning says the land will be given to the National Parks and Wildlife Service. It's anticipated negotiations will take place to include it in the Glenrock State Recreation Area.
Alderman Welsh. Development plan.
It was a noisy start to the exhibition's Newcastle visit this afternoon. 23 Pantechnicons and 30 prime movers joined forces on Wharf Road after travelling from Armidale today. During 1988, the exhibition will travel about 20,000 kilometres and visit 34 towns and cities. Now it's Newcastle's turn to experience the Bicentennial's biggest continuous event. On Newsnight last night, the exhibition's Deputy Director, Tony Sadler, explained the concept behind this ambitious project.
The exhibition was created to allow people from all over Australia to see the same exhibition in the bicentennial year. We've organised a trucking exhibition that's allowed us to travel 2/3 of the way around Australia now and present an exhibition of very high quality.
For the next 2 days, the team of more than 100 workers will be setting camp on a specially prepared site next to the International Sports Centre at Broadmeadow. The tent city will take shape in readiness for Saturday's first day open to the public. The construction workers, display organisers, caterers, shopkeepers and security men all live in caravans for the year. The convoy includes a canteen and firefighting vehicles. The massive trucks, most of them Kenworths, as well as carrying the equipment from town to town, become an integral part of the show by actually holding up the big tents. The theme of the exhibition is Living Together. The whole thing cost nearly $40 million, with BHP a major sponsor. Tickets for the 5-day Newcastle exhibit go on sale tomorrow.
Well, generally fitness is quite important, especially when it's a windy race. Also, laser sailing, or sailing generally, is like a mind game. You've got to know about wind shifts, about tide and different things like that. You've got to work out where the wind's likely to shift, what it's going to be doing during the race. So that's a major part of sailing, is being able to pick up shifts and things like that.
Jacqueline has been in the sport for 8 years, sailing lasers for the last 3. Proudly exhibiting her world championship trophies to friends, the young physical education student seems destined to be a dominant force in world sailing for a long time. At the World Championships at Bournemouth on the southwest coast of England, Jacqueline's performance was so good that she won the title after 6 of the 7 races set down for the meeting.
How did the conditions in England compare with what you're used to here in Newcastle?
Well, the wind was fairly similar because we get fairly strong winds here down in Belmont, but sailing on a lake was very different to sailing out on the ocean where we were in Falmouth, because there's the waves that you have to think of, and tide. We don't have tide in Belmont. So there's all those little things that you have to add in, which sort of complicate the matter somewhat.
Well, you were obviously very successful. How does it feel being the best in the world?
Very good. It didn't hit me until the presentation night. I sort of didn't realise, and I just sort of sat back and thought, my gosh, it's finally happened. I did it.
$503 cattle, including 9 different breeds, were presented over the 3 days of the auction. On day 1, the Devon bulls were sold, with one bull selling at $12,500, a record for a Gloucester all-breed sale. Also, an Australian record of $6,700 was set for a Devon herd bull. That is, a bull not registered under a stud. Average prices were $300 up on last year. On the second day, Shorthorns, Pole Herefords and Santa Gertrudis were offered, with prices equal to, and in some cases better, than last year. The best price of the day being $4,600 for a Shorthorn bull from Walker. Local breeder Rob Crowther, who sold the top Pole Hereford bull of the sale, says it's important to produce the bull that the buyer wants.
Commercial market's looking for early maturing cattle. I'm not selling bulls for the bullock market so much as the smaller holding chap that's selling through the local sale yards for local trade meat, really. That's what it boils down to.
With excellent seasonal conditions around the state, markets opening up in Japan, Korea and America, local auctioneer Ross Crothers says the success of these sales underlines a new prosperity in the industry.
The cattle market is the strongest it's been for many years. The increased export potential around at the moment has put a very good base in it, and the shortage of cattle generally has meant that it's the strongest we've seen it for a long time.
Farmers should have a few dollars in their pockets. Are they spending it here?
Well, they're spending it on certain cattle. They're being selective with what they're buying, but certainly the top end of the cattle are making more money than we've seen for some time.
Do you think that reflects a buoyant rural economy?
It certainly does. To a large extent, it's well, as I said, it's the best it's looked for some years, and it's being reflected in the prices paid.
The quality of the Hereford cattle shown on the final day was excellent. 188 bulls were sold with an average price of $2,105, $300 up on last year. The top price of the day was $5,500 for a bull from Deepwater near Glen Innes.
Today, wool has surpassed all Australian industry to become the biggest money spinner on our trade list. That feat is due chiefly to the mammoth prices the fleece has been fetching in recent months. And while the prices at the Newcastle wool sales were a little down on the April peak, they were still strong enough to keep wool at the top. Of course, the brokers will tell you it has to do with demand outstripping supply, the Australian dollar, but when it boils down to it all, it's the quality of Australian wool that has made it the success story that it is today. And the Clippers exhibition at the Newcastle Library was a tribute to the great forefathers of wool. With the use of historic photographs and colourful explanations, it traced the history of wool, particularly its association with the port of Newcastle. With the New England region renowned over the decades for producing a top-quality clip, the port actually started the direct overseas export of wool in 1883. Photographs depicting the great journeys of yesteryear from the farm to the ship decks lined the walls, while some of the pastimes of the good old days made a welcome return. Of course, there was also a look at the modern-day port, with its computerised facilities handling the neatly packaged wool bales, a far cry from the blood, sweat and tears of the last century.
The Mater Hospital's oncology unit was established in 1985 to treat cancer sufferers previously forced to travel to Sydney. Through massive public support, a centre of excellence has been established. The first linear accelerator is treating up to 60 patients a day, with about 20 on the waiting list at any time. The demand for a second accelerator was recognised, and once again the people of the Hunter, through telethons and the Cancer Appeal Committee, kicked in for the extra $1.3 million needed for the second machine. But today, that machine is lying idle. There's no rush to finish the complex commissioning program because there's nobody to drive it.
Well, the worst case scenario is that we're not going to be able to run both our machines together, and the worst case is if our shortage becomes more acute, then we may even have to cut existing services, and that means that some patients may have to be treated in Sydney.
14 therapeutic radiographers are needed to operate the two machines. There are only 6 on staff. What's the workload been like here over the past few months?
It's been horrific since I came actually 3 years ago. We've been constantly busy between approximately 60 patients a day. So yes, we are very, very busy.
And what are you going to do to try and make up that shortfall in trained people?
I'm off to the UK next week to interview staff. We advertised over there extensively and we've had about 16 applicants, and I'm going over to interview them and trying to help them through their immigration procedures and get them here as quickly as possible.
So we have to import our trained people?
Yes. It's a horrible thought, isn't it, that we can't supply the market here in this country.
This is because none have been trained in New South Wales for some time, while academics and governments fight over where to educate them. The Hunter Institute of Higher Education is ready to take on students next year, but Education Minister Metherell won't approve the course on the grounds that it duplicates resources such as those already at Sydney's Cumberland College.
The situation is such that the facilities, as you can see, are superb. They have been identified as such. The facilities are available. Educationally, it's a goer. We have troubles understanding why we have not been given the green light on that as well.
Then there's the money being paid to New South Wales therapeutic radiographers. Because they're dedicated health workers, they refuse to take any industrial action. That could only hurt the people they're trying to help. The result is that their wages and career structures have suffered. They're paid substantially less in New South Wales than in any other state. A senior can earn up to $34,000 a year in Western Australia. The maximum here is $25,000. Little wonder the Mater is finding it hard to get people to work in Newcastle.
For some teachers, it seems their classroom days are over. 13 teachers are to go in the Hunter. some of whom have already received the official letter, effectively sacking them. The Vice President of the New South Wales Teachers Federation, Janet McLean, says the Federation is particularly annoyed as the department had stated in a letter on August 24th that further discussion would take place on the matter. The Director of Education in the Hunter, Alan Beard, says the scheme might cause some difficulty for teachers without superannuation, but special exceptions may be made on compassionate grounds.
But for most of them, they are approaching a time when they are financially secure. Most people who are permanent in the teaching service do have superannuation, and, if you like, are at a time of their lives when they can be quite financially independent, even though they've retired from teaching.
How would you feel, though, if you were 60 years old, you wanted to keep working and you weren't allowed to do that?
Well, I think it'll be a great disappointment to some people, because the reason that they've applied to stay is that they're indicating that's what they would rather do. So I would think they'd be quite disappointed.
The matter has been referred to the New South Wales Industrial Commission.
These branches, being examined at the Gosford Horticultural Research and Advisory Station, are a small sample from just one Upper Hunter vineyard. In many of the offcuts, staff are finding exactly what they are looking for. This is the grub form of what some consider a major threat to the lucrative Hunter wine industry.
Where it occurs in the Parkland area, there is considerable damage. There's a high percentage of vines infested, and the physical damage of the attack is severe in a particular vine.
What are they Dr. Stephen Goodwin, Senior Entomologist at the Gosford Research Station. He has been examining the borer and testing insecticides to combat it when it emerges from the vines in its adult form. Fig Longicorn is in fact native to Australia, and there are records of its presence in the valley from early this century. However, Dr. Goodwin says the last drought allowed the beetle to badly infest weakened vines, and with the banning of organochlorine pesticides, vignerons could be facing a long battle.
As far as the long-term viability of a vineyard is concerned, the fig longicorn beetle, which is occurring year after year, is causing considerable accumulated damage which has got to debilitate vineyards and shorten their lifespan.
The Department of Agriculture has allocated $21,000 for a year of research into the problem, but according to Dr. Goodwin, that will barely scratch the surface. He says he is disappointed that those most directly affected by the borer aren't also prepared to contribute to its eradication. Several months ago, the Hunter Valley Vineyards Association rejected an offer to fund a $100,000 research program, dollar for dollar, with the department. President of the association, Chris Barnes, says the Hunter has missed out on research funds anyway, and it is not fair to apply the use of pays principle. Although he could not say how much the vignerons would be prepared to contribute, Mr. Barnes says they expect the department to first outlay a large percentage of the costs.
The new breast centre has been established at Christo Road Private Hospital to offer an all-in-one service to women suffering breast cancer. The Premier's wife, Catherine Greiner, who officially opened the centre today, inspected the latest mammography equipment. The French-designed unit, which is purpose-built to take detailed breast x-rays, is part of a $300,000 purchase. Included is this stereo TICS machine, which can help doctors pinpoint lumps with incredible accuracy and sometimes allow pathologists to make a diagnosis even before surgery. Once a cancer has been located, and it can be a lump as small as a pinhead, the patient can be treated under the same roof. The soft pink tones of the centre speak volumes for its approach to treatment, which has a strong emphasis on making the patient feel at ease, removing the great fear many women have over breast-related problems.
Most lumps in the breast are not cancers, and 8 or 9 out of 10 patients who have breast lumps do not have cancer.
What sort of fears do women have when they present themselves with a breast cancer?
A patient with a breast cancer, most of the fear is actually not related to the cancer itself, but a fear of the unknown, a fear of not knowing what's actually going to happen to them. And this will be clearly explained in this centre and any treatment options will be clearly elucidated.
The non-producing shareholders.
Police were called to the Carrick Street home at about 4 o'clock amid reports that a man had died after being hit on the head by a rock during a stone-throwing exchange with neighbourhood teenagers. A post-mortem today suggested that the man, Henry Renfrew, died as a result of a heart attack. Police say a superficial head injury was consistent with a fall during the collapse and was in no way associated with the stone-throwing incident. Detectives interviewed 6 local youths before deciding that the altercation had been of a minor nature. A routine report is being prepared for the coroner.
Bob Martin heard of the court's decision just before 11 o'clock this morning and admits his first reaction was one of complete dismay.
I was disappointed and surprised.
But far from being down and out tonight, the member for Port Stephens, who will remain so until 10:30 tomorrow morning, says this has done nothing to dent his political future. Although refusing to pass judgment on the court's decision, he said none of the grants he'd procured for community organisations leading up to the election were aimed at influencing votes. In fact, he says many of those weren't handed out until the day before the election, purely to avoid such speculation.
I think the people are old enough and mature enough, and you know, people aren't stupid, and I gave out cheques on behalf of the government, and this was challenged for the first time in the history of New South Wales. It's been going on since probably the word politic arrived in the Greek language.
The review of the poll was made by the Court of Disputed Returns after an application by one of the defeated candidates, Bob Scott, a Liberal. In handing down his decision, Justice Needham said he did not consider Mr Martin's actions corrupt in the ordinarily accepted meaning of the word. He said these days it seems accepted that public monies are in the unrestricted gift of those in power, and in some cases the temptation is to use such resources for purposes of party political advantage. For Bob Martin now, it's back to square one. He says he'll be back on the hustings next week preparing for the new election in his seat. And it seems likely he'll have opposition leader Bob Carr on the trail with him, along with the support of most of his colleagues.
This decision did find you guilty of treating. Just what does that actually mean now for the electorate of Port Stephens?
Well, His Honour has ordered a new election.
Will Bob Martin be in that election?
Up to his ears.
Although the Olympic flame isn't planned as an eternal fixture at Kotara, the lighting of the look-alike torch was an important occasion for the mini Olympians from Kotara Public School. And once the torch was safely lit, the games began. They involved the entire student population of more than 50, from kindergarten to year 6. Events contested included boat, bicycle and horse races and gymnastics. The youngsters represented 5 nationalities, demonstrated with pride during a march past. The students marched in the colours of Finland, Brazil, Korea, Kenya and India. Kotara Public School has students from each of those countries. Gold, silver and bronze medals were presented to the winners. And 12-year-old Ben Webster, son of television's Tim Webster, who as you've seen is in Seoul for the real Olympics, was proud to accept a gold medal for Finland's efforts in the boat races. Today's activities were the culmination of weeks of practice, and while topical and educational, they also proved to be an ideal assimilation exercise for students from other countries.